Welcome, everyone. I'm Jeff, and this is Love and Other Investments.
And I'm John. And Jeff, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're talking about inflation.
Ouch.
It's a timely subject because things are painful right now.
What in the world could this possibly have to do with my relationship?
I think we're going to find out.
Yeah. So you may have noticed that things are getting more expensive. You can't fill up your tank without,
Yeah.
swearing.
It cost me $70. The tank wasn't even empty the other day.
Yeah. I saw a meme this morning that made me giggle. It says, really excited. We got approved for our loan. We should be closing on Thursday on a new tank of gas.
Right.
And I kind of think that's how we all feel. And it would be one thing, if it was truly funny or if it was just had something to do with gasoline. But, it's food. If you're trying to buy a house right now, you know that interest rates have spiked.
Yeah.
And what you'd kind of planned on a monthly payment has gone through the roof.
Right.
And, some of these things are going to be here for a while. So we thought, hey, this is something that creates financial stress.
Can you tell us, though, what is inflation?
Well, inflation is just what we've been talking about. It's when my dollars don't go as far as they used to. Inflation is basically things go up in price. And I don't want to go down a rabbit hole and turn this into an economics class. But it's always going to be a question of supply and demand. And when there is not enough supply, people overpay. They're forced to overpay. And that happens for, things that we aren't as scared about, things like concert tickets or, stuff that we want that we know is hard to find, but we're willing to pay a little bit more for it because it's scarce. And then it gets really frustrating when it starts getting into some basic issues like food and gas and, medicine and
So
education.
prices climb, but wages don't necessarily climb with it.
As fast, right. Wages are typically, trailing or coming in later. So, it becomes this rude awakening. We know that things get more expensive over time. We've seen what's happened with, health insurance or college education gets more expensive over time, and we kind of get used to, oh, that's how inflation works. But we really haven't seen a big spike in inflation in the U.S. economy for 20, 30 years.
Yeah, interest rates have been really low, like record lows, right?
Correct. And now we're coming out of that. And some would say, oh, well, this is just getting us back to normal. But when you have a system and somebody, and it becomes your normal,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden the system changes, and your money doesn't go as far as it used to, it's pretty disrupting.
Painful.
And painful.
Yeah.
And that can cause some stress.
We're talking, you're alluding to relationship stress, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how, let me ask you, how do you think, or what are some ways that you think that the fact that things are more expensive, that people's budgets aren't going as far as they used to, that could create some stress in a relationship?
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to see, for those folks who have not had a lot of conversation about money or who already have conflict about money, which is incredibly common, you're going to see an increase in conflict, in relationship conflict around, the fact that money doesn't buy what it used to. So now you have a perception of less of it, right? Mm-hmm. It has less power to purchase something, and that means the thing you need to get, like a tank of gas, is going to start eating into the things that you enjoy spending your money on, or maybe some other things you need to spend your money on, and there's going to be some relationship stress related to that.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to maybe describe this is to describe the stress that comes around scarcity.
Yeah,
Scarcity is when I don't have enough, right?
Right.
And I always use the analogy when I think about scarcity of, you're a young couple, you both have a job or one of you's working and, life is good and you have a good schedule and you go to bed and you wake up in the morning somewhat rested, life gives you enough sleep and your schedule's great. And then you decide to expand your family and have a baby and the baby shows up and all of a sudden the sleep that you were used to getting is gone.
Yeah.
And you go, wait a minute, there's still 24 hours in every day. What happened? This shouldn't be, I know the rumors that kids don't sleep well, babies don't sleep well, but this is real. And all of a sudden, there's less sleep available as a resource to this couple.
Right.
And, maybe you went from both of you getting 7 hours a night, which is 14 hours of combined sleep. And now maybe the combined sleep available in the family due to this baby is 8. And
Yeah.
so there's 8 hours of sleep left sitting in the middle of the room.
Who's going to get that 8 hours?
And so, you both kind of circle around it like you're playing, what's that game with the chairs? Musical chairs.
Yeah.
You're playing musical chairs with the remaining 8 hours and you're wondering who gets it.
Yeah.
And that type of competition over something that's scarce
Creates resentment.
It creates
Greed.
arguments, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so, I'm just basically saying that this time period, whether you're finding yourself, hey, we can't do the things that we need to do, or whether you're, fortunate enough to be able to pay for all the things that have gotten more expensive, but you're not able to do some of the things that you wanted to do, or the things that you think you should be able to do, even right down to saving. Those can create some stress. And so, what I thought we would talk about today a little bit is how is it that a couple can successfully navigate dislocation like this that is kind of thrust upon you unexpectedly. So first of all, the thing that I might start off with is the idea, and I think some people are kind of hoping for this, is they're watching the news or reading the paper, for the people who still do that, and they say, oh, well, I've heard that inflation's going to calm down, later next year, or it's not going to be a big deal next year, for a myriad of reasons, right?
Sure.
Whether they're true or false. But I think one of the things to explain really quick is that inflation in itself is kind of like an acceleration rate. So if I'm driving down the freeway at 60 miles an hour and I accelerate, now I'm going 70. If I stop accelerating after I hit 70 miles an hour, and I think of that as inflation, I go, well, there's no more inflation. I'm still going 70.
The rate of inflation hasn't changed. It just hasn't progressed faster than 70.
Correct. So I can go back to a zero inflation rate, a zero acceleration rate after I hit 70.
still fast.
I'm still going fast, which means, prices can go up 10% and not go up anymore, and they're still 10% higher than where your budget was really ready to handle them.
So until wages would catch up to that, the pinch, the pain is still there.
Yeah, the adjustment still has to take place.
Yeah.
And I do believe that parts of our economy eventually will see lower prices again. We could make a strong case that, gas prices will come down some. We could make the case that some of the commodity prices that go into building materials and the stuff that our companies make might come down some.
So home prices maybe would come down if
Yeah.
construction materials dropped a little.
But there's no strong reason to believe that interest rates are going to come down or that, food prices have to come down anytime soon. And so I say all of this basically just to let our audience in on the idea that this isn't something that you can wish away.
You're going to have to cope with the reality in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, if it does come down, if some of these things come down and it makes your life a little bit easier, well, then great. But it is not a plan to say, well, let's just hope it works out in our favor. And so what typically happens, and we're already seeing it, is that in times of inflation, people don't adjust their budgets quickly. And so what happens is we see people taking on extra debt. We see credit card balances typically starting to creep up, and creep is the word of how that works. Hey, we're about $150 a month short, so we can't make the full payment on the credit card. We can't pay it all off.
Gotcha.
So things just slowly start developing into a pattern that isn't long-term sustainable, and it doesn't seem really painful at the beginning, but over time, those credit card balances grow and the interest rates grow, and it becomes harder and harder to pull yourself out because you're waiting for prices to go down to free up budget money, and that may or may not happen.
You're saying that people want to purchase at the same level they did prior to inflation accelerating, but they can't, And to make up that gap, they would use something like a credit card or line of credit or something like that. And after a while, you can't sustain that, correct?
Right. And you kind of do it at the beginning because you hope this is just a temporary deal.
Yeah.
You know, you hope you're going to get a raise. You hope you get a different job. You hope prices will come down. But this is kind of like, and I want to say this isn't a financial experience. I mean, yes, it's financial, but it's much bigger than that. It's a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
The place that I connect with this personally is this is just like a diet, right? You know, if I start gaining a little bit of weight because I'm eating the way that I want to eat,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I could wish that I could drop those pounds. And I might even go back to the way that I was eating before I started gaining weight. But again, dealing with inflation,
Right.
If my
Right.
waistline is inflating and I just go back to where I was before it inflated, I'm doing nothing with the excess that I've put on.
I mean, I like this analogy because I think a lot of people can relate to the suffering that comes from a diet.
Yes,
It's painful
it is.
and often unsuccessful.
And I mean, how many billions of dollars have people spent
Right.
on diet books
Diet
and
products
programs and
right.
pills and everything to try to come up with some easy way to address the fact that, you know, we're taking in more calories than what we're burning off.
So what are you suggesting? I mean, I think you've laid out the problem.
Right.
I think you're saying that this is, of course, a math problem, but on a bigger scale, it's a human being problem, right?
Right.
So what are you suggesting?
Well, I'm saying that, first of all, this is somewhat different than a diet because in most cases, I'm in charge of what I eat. But in a marriage, when you're dealing with inflation, this is a financial problem for a couple to solve. I mean, we've all had that moment where I'm getting ready to go on a diet. Would you go on one with me? This is absolutely a moment where, hey, we're going to have to go on a financial diet.
Uh-huh.
And not just a diet, but more importantly, a financial lifestyle adjustment because things have changed.
You need buy-in from your partner.
You need total buy-in and total understanding from both people about where you are, what has changed, what it means, and what are we going to do differently in order to address it.
Tell us a little bit about the where you are part.
So the idea of knowing your location financially is a really big concept. And we talk about it in our classes, but the basic concept is that I need to know what I'm spending money on. And typically in most couples, one person has more understanding of where the money is going on a daily basis or on a monthly basis than
Because
the
they're
other.
in charge of the money.
Because they're doing it,
Yeah.
right? They're doing the bills.
Sure.
And so it's really difficult for somebody to say, well, you need to change what we're doing. We're racking up credit card debt. We're going into debt, or we're not able to go on vacation, or we're not able to save what we were saving, and you need to fix it.
Mm-hmm. You're spending too much.
You're spending too much. We can't
It's
spend
an
like
accusation.
this. Right.
Right.
We can't do this anymore.
You're saying that in order for this whole thing, for a couple to figure out what to do about the problem of inflation, they have to understand what they really spend, their total income and their total expenditure. And that's what you mean by when you say you need to know your location.
Right. And the reason that's important is because we believe, and I think rightly so, that not every dollar that we spend is as important as every other dollar. So I think it's probably more important that you make your house payment than
Buy a new TV or
buying a new television.
new game system or something like that.
Yeah, or getting a massage, right? You might really need a massage, but getting a massage after you've had your house foreclosed on and you're homeless isn't going to quite cut
Solve
the
the
mustard.
problems, right?
Right. So I believe that all of us have things that are more important than others that we spend money on, but I don't believe that most couples have invested the time to go through together and not only know where they spend money, but have jointly agreed upon what the things are that are most important. And we talk about this all the time, that you need to have some shared values about, what is financially important to you, what is relationally important to you, what direction is your relationship trying to move, and how do you use resources, and I know I'm saying a lot here, but how do you use resources in alignment
With the values.
with the values so that you're making progress to this thing that you want to accomplish over years and years and years.
Yeah. So this is a concept you and I have been playing with for years. The idea that couples need to have some common or shared values,
Right.
some principles or ideas about what's more important to them than money or anything else.
Yes.
And when they figure out what it is that they have in common with respect to their values, they can use those as guides in determining what it is they're going to purchase
Or
how they
not
spend.
purchase.
Yes.
You know,
How
it's a
they
time
spend
of
the money.
inflation. There's 8% less money,
Right.
or our money is buying 8% less than what we're used to accumulating or
Right.
using
Right.
during a year. So what is the low hanging fruit that we can start saying no to, that we can both agree to,
Yeah.
and maybe have, a little cry about it because, hey, we're not going to be able to do this going forward.
But if you have some common values, hopefully you're on the same page. Like, okay,
Yes.
these are the things that are most important. We're going to spend our dollars on these things or rein them in to the extent we need to, and the other stuff is extraneous.
Yeah, and so instead of focusing on all the things that we're going to do without, shoot, well, I guess Starbucks is out. Or shoot, I think the way that we're planning our vacation needs to change. People could go, that's terrible. Look at what I'm having to do without. If you're a couple who has spent some time and decided what you really want to accomplish over the next several years, and you're still able to do that, and you've only had to slough off a few convenient, mildly enjoyable things in order to still make those goals, you don't look back twice.
Yeah.
You say, well, yeah, that was fun, but that's not what we're about.
Yeah. We're focused on this, our common values.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it's really difficult to say, hey, when your house is on fire, you probably need to have a fire station close. And if you don't have one, you should probably get one.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if what you're hearing me say is, hey, we're racking up debt each month, or hey, we are as a couple really struggling through the fact that our money isn't going as far and it's turning into some arguments, it's turning into some conflict. If you're saying, hey, I need one or two ideas really quick to fix this, well, I can give you a few, and they're the obvious ones, and that is try to find really quickly a couple of things that you can get rid of. Maybe you go through your credit card bills and look at what you've got subscriptions for that,
Yeah.
music services or, workout deals or whatever it is that you're going, cut your cable bill. I don't know what it is, but maybe there's some low hanging fruit that you can kind of triage the budget and let go of those things for a time period until you build the fire station, right?
Right. Right.
But I think the big deal is that couples need to understand, first of all, that if this change, if a 5% or an 8% move in the financial markets as far as what things cost is kind of unmooring their relationship, then that in itself needs to be a big wake-up call.
Yeah. As you're talking, I'm thinking this is an incredibly important relationship issue. When a couple is aligned and they're working with the same goals in mind and have some common values that are pointing them in a direction, then, making some changes shouldn't be terribly difficult. But the truth is, probably most people aren't in that situation. And one will say, well, we need to cut out Starbucks, or, you can't buy those dresses anymore or whatever. And the other one's immediately like, you can't tell me what I can buy or not buy. I mean, I earned this money. And there's an immediate conflict there. Even if it's never spoken, there's some resentment that can build when you're having hard conversations about what to cut if you're not on the same page. So it seems to me that if you're in that category of people who are not on the same page financially, the first thing to address is that, rather than saying, let's cut out the Starbucks right now, because that quick fix thing we all know is not going to necessarily solve the bigger issue here.
It won't.
So it does seem like relationship first, right? Like let's solve the real issues in the relationship and then figure out what it is we're going to do with the actual dollars we spend or don't spend.
And I hate to say it, if you have been struggling in your relationship, communicating about money when things were good, when there wasn't a lot of
Yeah,
inflation,
right.
and maybe you have some well-practiced arguments about money.
Right.
You see that a lot,
A
right?
lot.
There's almost a script there's an unwritten script.
That's exactly what I tell people.
Yeah.
There's a script.
And the reality is that if that's your situation, and now, the financial pressure has been turned up to 11
Yeah.
because you were already struggling when things were going pretty well, that could be pretty detrimental.
Yeah.
To,
that script's going to go over and over. It's going to be more frequent and more intense.
right. So really, there has to be an understanding that, hey, the way that we have been doing things, not specifically the way we've been spending, although yes, but the way that we've been doing things and how we have been on the same page or haven't, how we've combined our goals or how we haven't, how we have communicated for the betterment of the relationship and for the accomplishment of core goals in life, or that we didn't. Those are the issues that have to be addressed.
Yeah.
And that's where the success in navigating a challenge like this has to come from.
So step one, look at your relationship.
Yeah, and ask, have we done okay in communicating about finances in the past? Or has this inflation thing basically taken something that's maybe moved from an annoyance level now into a crisis level? Or maybe there was no issue before, and now you're feeling that you're in this position where there's some relationship stress because of finances.
Right.
What I think you and I are wanting to propose is this is not strictly a money problem.
Money has meaning.
Yes.
We imbue it with meaning. It's different for every person.
Right.
And every couple has a different, sort of set of meanings they make of money. You got to deal with the meanings of that money.
So for instance, maybe you know some people who make 20% less than what you make as a couple, and they're pretty content and happy.
Yeah.
Maybe you know some people who make 100% more than what you make as a couple, and they're incredibly unhappy.
Right.
So your financial position is not what dictates the success or the contentment of your relationship.
Yeah.
Circumstances will change. The weather changes, right? The temperature changes, and we know how to put on a coat or move down to a t-shirt,
Yeah.
or turn up the air conditioner. I mean, we know how to adjust to change in almost every area of our life. But now we're dealing with, how are we doing a good job in our relationship and communicating about money, and can we now change because the weather's changed, the financial weather has changed.
Sure.
So it's a very rational thing to expect. It is rational to expect the economy to go through cycles. Unfortunately, if you're younger, if you're under 40 years old, you probably have not experienced anything like this before, and you're going, I don't know how to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
But it is in your relationship, communication, goal setting, how you deal with each other, how you both understand what's happening financially, that you navigate this.
I bet people who might be listening to us talk right now were not expecting us to go here. Mm-hmm. I bet they were expecting us to give the 3 or 5 or 7 steps one ought to do to feel better about inflation,
Or who to blame.
who to blame, or like cutting out Starbucks or whatever. Yeah. You're talking about something that's really different, right? It's not financial advice. I don't even know what that is. I mean,
Right.
It's not a 7-step process by which, there's some cure at the end. You're going to feel better. It's not McDonald's. You go in the line and you give your order and you drive up, 30 feet and then they hand you the burger.
Right.
You're talking about something deeper.
I'm saying that you are surrounded by other couples in your life, and maybe you're feeling some pressure right now because the rules of the game have changed. Inflation is what you're paying for things has changed. Your income hasn't changed to adapt to it. And you're looking around at the other couples around you, and some of them are as stressed as you are, some of them are more stressed than you, and some of them aren't stressed at all. And I'm saying that there is very likely a common thread with the ones that are not stressed, in that they're able to communicate about this change and adapt to it. They have a flexibility in how they deal with money without losing their identity.
They're on the same page.
They're on the same page. And so when you're on the same page, you can adapt. And you can, we were playing volleyball, now we're playing baseball. Okay, I wasn't planning on playing baseball, but we're flexible and we can do it.
Yeah.
And the other couple's like, no, we play volleyball, and I don't know what to do with this bat,
Right. Right.
so I'll just hit you with
Yeah.
it.
Some people are not naturally flexible like this. So if you're in a relationship and that's the case, hopefully one person in the couple can encourage the one who's less flexible.
So let me try to give a couple of tips, and we haven't run through these ahead of time. Maybe you can add to this list.
Sounds good.
But I think one of the basic things that you can do if you're willing to get into this as a couple is to sit down, start sitting down together, blocking off some time, starting to look at where your money goes as a couple, and just sharing some conversation back and forth about how important are these things and why. We're really big in the why, right?
Right.
Why are these things important? So if, like you said, if you would just cut out Starbucks,
Yeah, I was just going to say about this. So, I think I love this idea, but I think it also has a potential to cause some conflict if the purpose of sitting down and saying, let's look at our money is to point the finger. Like I think you would have to approach this with some genuine curiosity and empathy and be open to the conversation, not come in hot with
what are you going to do?
blaming. Right.
Yeah, this is a what are we going to do?
Yeah.
How are we going to share this change?
Yeah.
The change is upon us, right? Winter's here. How are we going to share this change?
Sure.
And a little bit of this gets down to, what is essential for us and what is less essential. Are we okay going into debt for the foreseeable future to not have this conversation? I mean, that's really what we're playing for, right?
Sure.
And if we do go into debt for the long haul, does that lead us to an even worse place?
Right.
And I would propose likely.
Okay. So one thought is know where you are, what your location is.
The other one is to find out what things mean, right? You said it earlier in the episode. You said, hey, these things have meaning. Money doesn't have any meaning other than what we kind of pour into it. So, some of these things are important to you. Some of them aren't. It's helpful to share with your spouse or your partner why they're important, because that helps build empathy, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
this is important to me because of X, Y, and Z.
Sure. And I think if you're going to use this as a pathway to build connection and relationship, that when someone else says, your partner says what's important to them, it's extremely vital that you not dismiss that because it's not important to you.
Right.
Just because something is not important to you does not mean it isn't important to your partner. So, you have to be open to the possibility that you and your partner are different.
Right. So let me give you one other point, and that is don't try to solve this all in one night.
Should be a process.
It's a process. So maybe you end up cutting out Starbucks and a massage, or maybe you decide that you're going to shop differently. You can do that one thing together. You can do that one thing where you both buy in together and take a little bit of a hit together to move the needle, and come back a week later and say, hey, that's helping. We're not going in the red as far as we thought. What else can we do?
Yeah.
Because success typically builds momentum.
I think we're going to have to do an episode on values.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe at some point, people can keep listening and we'll do one for them on what we mean by having shared values, because you're kind of pointing at that, right?
Right. So I would just encourage people, as we wrap up here, I would encourage people to take a good hard look at the fact that the weather has changed. And if they're feeling additional financial stress, if they're feeling some relationship stress, that it's time to sit down and talk about those things. If they have been in some bad patterns in how they communicate about money, and this is making things worse, then it's just that much more important to try to get on the same page and start having some discussions.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep talking about this.
Yeah.
We're going to keep looking at the ways that couples struggle and some ways to get them back in alignment together.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Thanks, John.